Clive and I work together. We run Make Sense Limited, and Make Sense Limited does what it says on the tin effectively. We make sense in relation to people-related issues in businesses. So we're a kind of one-stop shop for anything an organisation doesn't want to do in-house when it comes to people. All the way from business strategy and aligning that to their people goals, through to specialist employment law services, which we provide through our partner law firm Area Grace, which is a great not-for-profit law firm doing really good work for society, for the community and for the environment as well. We do HR projects on an interim basis and ad hoc basis. We do training, coaching, facilitation and keynote talks. So basically everything that touches on people. And that's really because Clive and I are both very passionate about people, what makes them tick, how we can all work better together and get the best results, not just for ourselves, but for the organisations that we work with. And Clive in particular focuses on making sense of insights from neuroscience and quantum physics and applying that to human performance. And I spend my life making sense of Clive and then trying to apply that to practical concepts that we can all use on a daily basis.
And God help you with that.
You can judge later. Just by way of background about myself, and then Clive will introduce himself. So the lot older you get, obviously, the longer your background gets, doesn't it? So I'll try and keep this short, but...
I could be here a while.
Yeah, I'm first. Actually, interesting, given it's a sporting theme today, I was very involved in team sports from an early age because, unfortunately, I didn't have much of a community feel at home, actually, and I found a lot of comfort in team sports as I was growing up, and I threw myself into them quite dramatically. So I've pretty much done all of them. Netball, lacrosse, which I do not know why is not more popular because I think it's a brilliant game. Hockey, I've done water polo, canoe polo, any kind of team sport you can think of, rugby, not football, interestingly. I've done them and I've always enjoyed being part of a team. And when I was young, I joined the Air Cadets, and that really fostered that sense of team and community in me as well. And ever since that, a very young age, about 14, I always wanted to join the military, and that's what I did after university. So I joined the military. I served as a Royal Air Force officer in the logistics branch for about 6 years, leading and managing teams of up to 200 people. And I did that in the UK, I did it in the Falklands, serving alongside the Gurkhas, which was a once in a lifetime experience. And I've done it in other places in Europe as well. And then when I left the Royal Air Force, I didn't know what to do with myself. So I continued my legal training and qualified as an employment law solicitor. Very different environment. Can't really say much more about that, other than fast forward about 10 years, had a spectacular period of burnout, completely hit a wall, and what I thought was the worst thing to ever happen to me actually turned out to be the best thing to ever happen to me, because what I realised then was I completely lost track of all the things that we've been talking about today: values, sense of self, community, vision, all the things that are really, really important to keep us going and to enable us to be part of high-performing teams, environments, good mums, colleagues, friends, all the other good things in life. I'd lost track of those. What my burnout experience did for me is then put me back on track. It allowed me to recover, and luckily I recovered quite quickly, realign myself with that core set of values, which has been talked about a lot and which I really do believe is important to everything that we do, and then rebuild from there and live the life that I wanted to live. And that's what led to me becoming self-employed. I met Clive and had some coaching with Clive, and then developed the business around these people-focused services in order to combine all of our experiences and really take that message around individual self-care and performance into people's businesses to really try and promote how looking after individuals, looking after ourselves and building the right environments can help people thrive. And that's something that we're both passionate about. And I still practice employment law, although I was very close to giving it up, because now I'm able to also take that message through employment law services as well, which generally doesn't happen in the legal world. It's just technical rules, apply it here, get on with it. I don't believe in that. I believe even behind employment law advice there is a person, and that person needs to be taken into account when giving, interpreting and applying advice. So now I'm self-employed and I work with a great consultancy law firm. I can provide legal advice in a way that's right for me. Hence, I didn't have to give up my career, which I had worked hard to get, and I've been able to combine it with all the other great things that we do in the business. So I just gave a bit of background there because one, that is who I am. That's how I've become who I am. But two, also the combination of different environments and life experiences that I've had has made me so passionate about what we do today. And I think that's important because we've talked about passion as well a lot today. And without that passion, you haven't got the resilience and the drive to keep doing it because it's hard sometimes. People don't listen sometimes. People don't get what you're saying. People don't like what you're saying. All those sorts of things. So resilience is key. And you've got to believe in what you're doing in order to have that resilience. So that's enough about me. Sorry, Clive. Over to you.
No worries, I've never heard you talk so much. So how many of you were at the last session that we did? Right, probably about a third, something like that. Okay, it's just useful for me to know later because there may well be a bit of audience participation in this. And I can imagine some people who were involved last time thinking, you're not going to bloody get me up there again. So we'll see, we'll test that later. Right, so yeah, my background, just very quickly, I was in the corporate world for a long time, ended up in various leadership roles, started off in HR actually, even though in those days we called it personnel. So it was like 10 years of HR, 20 years on the business side, and ended up being a CEO of quite a big business. What's always run through my life is a fascination with what makes people tick, but also perform. Okay? Sport has always been a part of my life, and I guess that's where the performance bit comes in, is what enables people to go on to a next level of performance, whatever that might be. Now, we're talking, our context today is a lot of sport is here, but the same principles absolutely apply in the world of organisations. Because, sometimes we're wary in Happiness Index of using the word performance culture or high performance because that can be associated with a hire and fire type approach. And we're a bit nervous about that. It's like high performance, in other words, if you don't cut it, you're out. Okay? That's not indicative of the approach that we like to have. So we're going to go into some of that stuff today, and particularly I'm going to give you some science around what I've done in both my exposure to sport, some of which has been at a professional level as a coach, and also my understanding of the neuroscience that I've been studying for the last 20 years and working with clients on that stuff. Okay? So we'll pick it up shortly.
That's us again.
Spot the difference.
So we just wanted to start with this slide, which is really the basis of everything that we start from, really. Most of what we do is based on the fact that everything is a human experience. So you can't really go forward unless we can appreciate that and build that into our thinking and also into the way we approach whatever it is we're trying to solve. And obviously being part of a team is a human experience. It's not a application of facts, or just a set of logic. We are experiencing being part of something. So we really want to make it fundamental that we bring that concept into this high performance team subject and really think about what that means. And we live in a fast-paced world, and everything around us is evolving so quickly. I don't know about any of you, but I can't keep up with technology. In fact, I hate technology. I have to go even for the most basic advice on Excel spreadsheets to another person. But it's evolving so quickly, along with the environment, social changes, all these sorts of things, and we can't keep changing quickly enough to keep up with it. So what do? We put pressure on ourselves. I know I certainly sometimes put pressure on myself to perform more, to be better, to keep going, to work faster. In fact, I was just talking to a business the other day, and it was all about how do we get our employees to work at pace. How do we get them to go quicker and do more? Which they call high performing. But is it? So what do we actually even mean by high performance? Have we actually sat down and thought about what we're saying when we want to reach high performance? There's a huge amount in that. It's a big subject. It involves human beings, and we're all different. And there's lots of different ways we can approach this subject. What we're going to do today, hopefully, is scratch the surface of some of the beliefs we have around what makes a high-performing team and what the concept of high performance is. And in order to do that, we're going to just kick off with some science for you, because it really is a mind, body and brain experience that we need to take into account when we look at high-performing teams.
Okay, so in neuroscience, I'll walk across a very wide spectrum. And I can position it like this, okay? Over here is the survival side of our experience. And up here, we have a thrive side. They're all part of our instincts that operate within us. Basically, when you're looking at high performance, it's really a form of growth, a form of extreme thrive state, where we are absolutely trying to be our best because we want to be. Equally, I can work over here with people who feel isolated, anxious, and struggling with their well-being, who are different in society, okay? The focus today is over here, but there's always going to be elements about how do we get from there to here. Because high performance is always also about removing the barriers that stop us being who we want to be. If I put it in this context, step number one is to understand that the mind is not something that simply evolves around the head. The mind is something that goes deeply into the body, and the body itself is a sensory intelligence system which is constantly providing information to the brain so that we can make sense of ourselves and we can progress further in our lives. Okay, so when we talk about mind and body stuff, it's really very, very real. And people in the sporting world will know that when you're physically drained, it's very hard to be mentally sharp. To get in that balance right. As just an example, the brain is responsible for about 2% of the body's weight, but it can use typically up to about 25% of our energy. And the brain uses energy, it doesn't generate it. The energy is generated primarily from the heart. Now that's a very interesting introduction point, because as you guys will know, you cannot think your way to being confident. You can't think your way to being the best you want to be. It has to come from a deeper place. And what this shows is what happens is a representation of the main intelligence points within the body. And when I originally spoke to a senior neurological consultant on this, he talked about us having 5 brains in the body, which was an interesting starting point for the conversation. So we can ignore the 2 small ones that sit up here, but the essence of this, the 3 that sit in the middle of this, is we have our own intelligence system, both in our heads, in our heart, and in the gut. And when we perform at our best, those intelligence systems are synchronized and they operate as one. The key thing about confidence is the organ which creates the conditions for confidence is the heart, not the brain. Okay? And that's because it has it sends out electromagnetic rhythms, frequencies, that actually is called entrain both the brain and the gut, and pulls them together so they're all operating at the same frequency. To give you an insight into that, when we do that and we enter the zone, as we will call it in the sporting world, we become up to 4 times more productive than we are operating at our normal level. And that's a concept called power spectral density. Now, I'm not going to go into the technicalities today, but please feel free to ask me about that later if you want me to. But if anyone has ever experienced being in the zone, it's something very special. We're not talking about an incremental improvement where, we're just having a good day. It's like somehow our experience of the world changes. For me, I was played in semi-professional cricket. For me, it was the big difference between a ball looking very small and moving at you at a hell of a pace and hurting you occasionally when you're dealing with very fast bowlers, compared with a ball that's coming at you like a beach ball and you can decide where you want to hit it on the field. And the difference between the two is the speed at which we process information. Everything in terms of performance is down to the speed at which we process information. Because basically, all sport and in organizations is about if we get ahead of the game, of the challenges coming to us. Okay? If we can process more quickly, we are in control of our response and get into position much more quickly than if we are not in the zone. Now, part of the challenge of this and the whole difficulty faced in the sports world is you cannot control areas like human emotions. We can do amazing things in sports science around how you can get people physiologically into a perfect state to be able to perform. And there are even, inroads that are being made into mental preparation for that. We're only scratching the surface, but it's a start. But ultimately, you cannot control how somebody feels on a particular day and on a particular moment. And at this stage, neither can neuroscience, but we're trying to work that out. Okay? Flip that into the organization space. That's why the happiness index pays so much attention to areas like emotions. We've been dominated by things like thinking processes, rational processes, which are important to channel energy, but what about the energy that's there in the first place? And Victoria mentioned quantum physics. Again, you'll be relieved to know we won't go into that today. But the reason for that is understanding exactly what energy is and how it works. Okay? So this is the new world that's opening up. And what we will do shortly is try to give you a context for if you're serious about high performance, we can give you some indicators of what you should be doing. But being serious is important. Don't expect to suddenly run a workshop, put a group of people together, and suddenly think you've got a high-performing team. It's a joke. When you look at the level of commitment that's involved in the sporting world, in making people, extreme athletes, it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. It's bound to come in here somewhere. My grandson and his dad is here today. He's at the Crystal Palace Football Academy. Okay, so he already at the age of 9 has to go training 3 times a week and play on Sundays. Play under pressure, but he wouldn't want to do anything else. Okay, and that's going to go on for what? God knows how many years before he's genuinely in position to possibly become a professional footballer. So you cannot do high performance on the cheap. And therefore things like how we understand resilience, that ability, you referred to earlier on as bounce back ability, how do we get back up because we want to? Okay?
Yeah, and it's also, we're going to look at how we work towards getting people to the zone when we need it, and it's easier in a sporting context to some extent to identify when that is, but in a more general business context, what do we actually mean by the zone and its equivalent? When is it we're asking people to be at that peak performance? Because it's not necessarily as easy to identify those circumstances, and as we'll see as we go through the presentation, is that we don't want people in the zone all the time, actually. But some environments will want that, will think they want that anyway, and will expect it, or use the language wrong. So as Clive said, it's not about just throwing these concepts out at your organisations or your teams. It's about really understanding what they mean. What do we mean when we say high performance? What do we mean when we say high performance teams? When do we need it, and how do we build the foundations to achieve that? And I loved what was said about job descriptions earlier, giving someone a fancy job description with global president, something like that in the title, isn't going to do anything to help towards, creating these high-performing teams. It has to come at a personal, meaningful level in order to engage people to want the results that we're all trying to achieve together. And so we produced a model, because that's what businesses do. No, no. We to be fair, we're not actually that wedded to models. I kind of had to half convince Clive to do this.
I don't like rules.
No, well, I don't really either. But it is helpful to some extent. You know, we're not wedded to models, and we mean that actually. But it doesn't hurt to have some sort of structure to a concept to guide people through the different stages involved in order to achieve what you want to achieve. And this is what we came up with.
No, it's what you came up with.
Well, I think it was Clive, but no, joint effort. No, it's taking us from a rocket's journey, if you like, from pre-launch all the way through to take-off, blast-off, whatever you want to call it, but taking us through the different stages of achieving that high performance and what we do when we get there in order to get us ready for the next time we need to reach that high performance. So, we talked about clarity earlier today. Models help with a bit of clarity around where we want to go with things. So hopefully the model will be useful in terms of guiding you through the different stages we believe are important, but also if you want to explain it to other people, you're welcome to use it.
I'm certainly behind the thinking, but I'm not behind the picture of the rocket. It looked like the person driving the rocket needs to be breathalyzed.
Yeah. That's also not Clive.
Okay, so, all right. So there's going to be a few slides now, but I'm going to skip through them quickly, okay? Because, again, it's trying to demonstrate, if you were serious about this stuff, then these are the things you need to consider, and they are at different stages, okay? So before you even start a journey to a high-performance team, there are certain prerequisites that need to be in place, and you can see some of them up here, okay? Again, I'm not going to go through every one, but it's like, if you take psychological safety, I talked at the beginning about removing the barriers. People need to feel safe in work, okay? They need to feel that they can be themselves, and that implies trust, etc., things like that they can put themselves out there, because particularly younger people, but all of us to a degree, surely we're still in a place of experimentation and finding out who we really are as we put stuff out there and either get valid feedback that we're in the right place or that we're not, okay? And that doesn't have to be explicit. It can be the way we feel. When we're in a strong place, we feel grounded, right? Which is very different to when you're chasing other people's agendas. So psychological safety is just one example of where we need to be before we even are at the point of starting the journey. Can we go to the next one? So, once we are ready and we're at the starting point of the journey, then we need to look at considerations like this, okay? Because it's not only about the launch pad, it's also about what support is going to be available to that team as they go through this journey. And for instance, on there, it may not be obvious, I'll explain it. What I particularly mean there by wider relationships is that, particularly in a bigger corporate organisation, a good starting point may be to pilot a particular team, e.g. one of the leadership teams in the business. Now, if the rest of the business is sceptical or hostile to that pilot, it won't succeed. So there needs to be wider supporting relationships culturally across the business, where generally the business wants this to succeed, okay? None of us can succeed on our own. I don't care if you are in a highly apparently individual environment. Yeah, I did some coaching work with Ian Woosnam, who was the sort of number one golfer way back in the 90s. Even then, people like that, it's so important the team they have around them. We all need relationships to get us to the places that we want to go, right? So relationships are a crucial element of this. You go to the next one?
Yeah, I was just going to say
Yes,
as well,
please.
I think what's really important there is, as well, we can say the right language, like psychological safety, supportive environments, all that sort of thing, and expect high performance, and then get everyone to compete against each other, which, to my mind, contradicts the whole concept of creating these team communities. And so the wider relationship part, the buy-in from everybody is crucial, I think, because what we see quite often is, please can you go and train that team on high performance, and that's the end of it. We don't want anything else to do with it. We just want you to go and make that team high performing. We're like, well, what part are you going to play in this? Oh, well, just let me know how it gets on, how you get on. and then nothing else is aligned, nothing else is aligned to that. Well, what can we do to support them to work together, to trust each other, to want to reach this goal together? And those things are forgotten. So that, I think this is one of the key elements, really, because if you haven't got that holistic approach, that community feel to this, it's always going to reach, it's always going to have obstacles in the path.
Okay, now we've had quite a lot of discussion today on this, and sometimes we'll, on the titles that are on here, and sometimes we'll use the language differently, okay? But that's fine, there's still clearly sincerity and intent behind that. But this is the rocket fuel that's going to sustain us through the journey. This is the stuff that's going to make us get back up. Because frankly, if you don't take any knocks on the journey, you're not really learning. You're not pushing yourself to a point where you take some risk and find out, do you really want this? You have to find those things, and when you are knocked down, you need to feel the reason for getting back up again. Resilience is fundamental to high performance. But we're talking team context here, and therefore there needs to be a shared resilience. So you can see not only, there's been plenty said about vision and good stuff, right? Undoubtedly, if you can't see it, you can't believe it, okay? So there needs to be a sense of shared vision, undoubtedly. But the one I want to focus on the most is trust, because it will lead into the next section. So we can just flip the next slide up. So, the journey itself, all of these things should be addressed. Now, you may sort of think, okay, God, this is a lot to do. But to be honest, a lot of this stuff you should be doing anyway. And the link with the last slide around trust I'm going to pick on is feedback. You need to give feedback in an honest but supportive way at the time when it matters most. And most organisations are very poor at giving feedback because we can't deliver it skillfully and we can't receive it skillfully. So there's a massive amount of investment that needs to go into helping people to understand why is feedback so important to me in the way that I progress. In the sporting world, if you've just had a bad game, it's no point in somebody telling you about it and 2 weeks later. You need it there and then. But you need it from a person that you know is on your side and is just trying to help you. But you got to cut the bullshit. You got to get to that point where you need to understand what's happening. Now, that may sound brutal, but it's not brutal if you're dealing with people that you trust. And therein is the essence of high performance as a team. If you haven't got that trust, you've got nothing. The place you're trying to get to in high performance as a team is to operate instinctively. The instinctive part of the brain is the most efficient part of the brain in terms of processing information and bringing about skill. That basically means that when you're in high performance mode, the practice is finished. All the practice should have been done beforehand. You cross the line, you're on the performance pitch, and you just do it. You do what you already know. Okay? What you've been practicing at time and time again. By overthinking or even thinking about a task, you're slowing the brain down. And when you slow the brain down, your ability again to respond, you think about a striker in football, they've got a split second to get that contact right. With some big central defender, for instance, just waited to flatten them if they can get the chance. So it's all about how we use that time, right? It's the same principle when we're operating in a business environment, because if it's a presentation, for instance, you want to be in a place that it feels like that's exactly the right place for you at that time. You feel grounded. It's a very different experience to when you don't feel confident. So it's that grounded feeling that comes through, and it's how do you create that in a team? In a team, and so you take the analogy again of the professional football team, they need to know each other, the other guy or lady is, or woman is. It's just happening. They know where they're going to be, and they've got each other's back. How rare is it to find that in the corporate world? Number one, it may not even be just active distrust, but it's just neutrality. We don't understand each other. How can you really trust somebody you don't understand? So businesses now are having to invest much more in mutual understanding in the workplace. What do we really have to offer? And you picked on Richard's comment earlier on. You look very comfortable there, Richard. I'm jealous. About, really not being too prescriptive around role profiles. And I think the way that I would interpret that is understand people, understand the talent that they can bring, create an environment where they can experiment with that, understand their passion, because we are at our best when we are passionate about what it is that we're trying to achieve, and we've put the hours into making it happen. Okay?
Yeah, I'll just add to that about meaningful goals as well, though, because trust underlies everything as far as I'm concerned. If we could get to perfect trust, most of our other problems, personally and professionally, would probably fall away. But meaningful goals help take us out of ourselves. So when we can be focused on a common, meaningful goal, a lot of the obstacles and challenges we face as individuals, our own self-consciousness, our own lack of confidence, our fear we're not good enough, all that sort of thing, gets put to the side because our focus isn't us, it's that collective goal in front of us that we're working on together, and we can only do one thing at once. So that sense of meaningful goal, meaningful coming together to achieve something, can really help take us forward as individuals and as teams as well. And again, it's just how do we work more towards making those goals really connect with the people who are trying to achieve them. I mean, how many people get in their car and drive to work in the morning thinking, I can't wait to live out my company values and I can't wait to achieve my meaningful goals that I set myself today. Probably not the first thought we have when, maybe walking from the bedroom to the garden office these days now, but in our tracksuit bottoms and smart top. But we have to get there. We have to get there to bring this stuff to life. And as we've said all the way through this, if we haven't got that passion and belief, we're not going to have the energy to achieve this. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah. So that's the rocket fuel that keeps us going. Right, next stage. Then there's the zone itself, right? And I talked about the zone earlier on, but in the organizational world, this is about understanding when do we need to be at our best, because we cannot be at our best all the time. That's called the treadmill, and the result of the treadmill, as Victoria will testify, is burnout. Okay? We can't be there. You look at it, the legal world, I don't care if there's a solicitor in the room, the legal world burn out so many people in their profession and then throw them out at the end of it and bring in the next horse to be beaten to death. It's crazy. People in the sporting arena understand it's all about being at your peak at the right time. And it's how you manage the flow, the natural flow of everything about us, including our heartbeat, that is about surge and then recover, surge and then recover. And we take that into our lives, and it's like, in sport we talk about practice, 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 right? So in the organizational world, it's like, okay, so we don't use the language practice, but it's like, when are we just doing the normal stuff, and when do we really have to step up? How do we manage that process? Okay? And this is just a simple way of capturing that, is that there are certain triggers to go into the zone, to be at your best. The first thing is it has to be regarded by you personally as highly important. So you can be a highly competent professional footballer or whatever, but the minute you stop thinking or feeling how important that is, you move into complacency. And complacency drops your performance. You can do it, but you can't turn it on. And how often do you see in football matches, for instance, when momentum goes against you, you can't get it back in the 90 minutes, right? Because it doesn't just recover just like that. So there are things like winning habits. When you regard something as important, there's then a very important task of rituals. So I mentioned golf earlier on. You look at golfers, look at tennis players, so many of them have their rituals. And what's actually happening then is you're familiarizing the brain with the challenge that's ahead. So when you're doing the same things, when Nadal is bouncing the tennis ball 14 times and driving me up the wall before he serves, he doesn't give a toss about me. He knows how to make himself the best. And he's saying to the brain, we've done this so many times, there's nothing to get distracted about, I know exactly where to focus, and I'm going to do it again. That's what high performance is. It's an instinctive state that we're trying to get to, both individually and as a team. Okay? And what we then effectively do from that is we channel our energy. Energy is the power behind this. Our mental states are what channel that power into performance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what I'd add to that as well is, when we say rituals, I think of them as high-performing habits as well, and training is a big part of that. And Gemma, you'll know from the military experience you've had, and anyone else who's had experience in that environment, you train, and then you perform when you need it. But the military doesn't expect you to be in the zone or in the peak performance state on exercise or in a war type scenario every single day. That would be ridiculous. That's what the preparation is for, and then we'll go on to the next stage in a minute, how you can get yourself ready for that to happen again. But there are some environments, like Clive said, like the legal world, and this is a generalisation, some are doing it differently now, where they do expect that every single day without fail. And those environments lead to ill health, they lead to burnout, and that, in my view, that isn't right. So we have to understand how we can fluctuate between getting people to the zone when we need it, and then allowing them to recover in order to be able to do it again. And I think this is one of the key stages in high performance that isn't talked about enough, because high performance is generally seen as keep on going, when actually that just leads to burnout. I've experienced burnout, I don't recommend it, although it was an interesting experience in hindsight, because it did all the things I said earlier. It allowed me to realign myself with my core values, who I wanted to be, how I wanted to work, how I wanted to show up in the world. So actually, from that perspective, it was a helpful thing to have gone through, but that doesn't mean that it's, we shouldn't avoid it if we can, and certainly we don't want environments to put us in a situation where we experience burnout. Personally, I think there should be a drive through organisations to upskill people on self-awareness, because one of the big factors in preventing and managing ill health, burnout, and then also enabling people to be their best, high-performing, to make the right choices for themselves and all those sorts of things, is understanding ourselves. And we don't generally get taught that. We learn it through experience. So in all the training that we do and all the talks that we do, we always emphasise the role of individual performance and individual self-awareness, and the role you have to also play in making sure that you understand what's right for you and how to recover. And if your environment's not allowing you to do it, you've got to stand up for yourself and make sure that you can do it, because at the end you're the person who's going to get ill at the end of the day and not be able to perform. We're okay.
You're in trouble now?
No, I'm not.
Let's have a bit of fun. Okay? I'd like Victoria to recruit 4 delegates from the audience.
Completely random?
Yeah, so what I want, let me give you some indication. This will only take about 5 minutes. Why should you have all of it? So basically, we did something like this last time, and it seemed to have stuck in people's minds, and we're going to build on that idea. And what I want is really funny, Gemma, because you are literally moving away from me as far as you can as I look for volunteers, okay? We want 4 people, and I want, preferably not from the front row, because we can disturb you a lot, we think you're safe up there. I want one person who thinks, first of all, let's start with this volunteer, who would consider themselves to be an instinctive person. Whatever instinctive means to you.
Let's go right at the back.
Well done. Can you come and join us, please? They're clapping you and thinking, what an idiot.
Thank you. Thank you, it's not me.
That's right, yeah. Come and stand over here, please. So, what's your name?
Jill.
Jill?
Brilliant. Come and stand over here, Jill. Okay. So all we're going to do here, the good news is you haven't got to do a lot other than just symbolise, and you'll find out what that's going to mean in a moment, okay? So basically, this is just a means of helping our memory understand what the different parts of the brain need to get to a place of high performance, okay? So I'm going to come back to you in a second. Second volunteer, please. If you consider yourself to be emotional, a sort of, you know, so many hands already. Right, pick on one of them, Vic, if you would, please. Come on, Emily. Right. So these are all, if you know anything about the happiness index model, you know, we talk about instincts, emotions, and two types of thoughts, rational thought and reflective thought, right? Hiya, I know you, don't I? So I don't have to introduce, well, I know both of you, actually, so there we go. So, name it?
Emily.
Ta-da! Okay. And by the way, of course, you're emotional. She needs a hug. Okay. Right. So, next person, anyone who considers themselves to be primarily rational. Logical.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like a blindfold? Hiya. What's your name?
Becky.
Hello, Becky. Okay, great. So again, just representing different parts. And then the last person who considers himself to be reflective. You're so reflective, you're still thinking about it.
Thank you.
Cool, we've got somebody? Great. Hiya, you alright?
Yes, you.
Yeah, good.
Alice.
Hello, Alice. Right. So I'll stand up here. So we've now got 4 representations of the different parts of the brain. When we are trying to put together high performance, either individually or as a team, we're trying to get the best of all of these parts. And they all need different things. And we've bounced some of the words around today, but this is a neuroscience perspective on this. And bear in mind, neuroscience is not psychology, it's focusing on the brain and what's going on in the brain. And we're trying to piece together over time neuroscience and psychology so that we got this total understanding of human beings. Okay? So if I come over here, excuse me, thank you. So in your instinctive space, what do you consider is your need to be in a place of high performance? There's no right or wrong.
Gosh.
So number one, that's unusual because instinctive people dive in very quickly.
I don't, in terms of being instinctive, I don't really think you consciously think about it too much.
No, you don't.
So,
what do you need to perform?
what do I need to perform? Autonomy, trust.
Autonomy.
Yeah.
Oh, autonomy, right? That's a great example. In other words, this is me. It's about me and what comes from me. It's a very grounded place. And bear in mind, I've said, when we put all this together, this is the space that we want to be in because it's the fastest performing part of the brain. Okay? Instinct, it's all about, number one, you've got to feel safe. You won't step out until you don't feel safe. And then it's all about how do I get to a point of results. We're going to capture these on the slide in a moment. All right? There's the picture of the brain in the background, just in case you haven't seen one before. Okay? Did that very well. Okay, what about from an emotional point of view? What do you need?
People to know me, to feel like I'm part of a team, to kind of have a bit more kind of context about who I'm working with and, you know, how we work best together.
Okay, perfect. So within the platform we talk about acknowledgement and relationships. Okay, they're the biggest emotional needs. So far you're all winning. Right, now we're in the rational space. So same question for yourself, and you've had a chance to think about it, which is what rational people like. Okay? What's for you?
Information and experience.
Okay. So we talk about the points that we discussed earlier on, clarity and enablement. So clarity is about, okay, so what exactly do you want me to do? Okay? Now that's not the same as the job description we were talking about. This is the point of execution because, you know, the rational space is all about what do I do about it. Now, the instinctive space will just go there anyway, all right? But a rational person needs to think it through, and now we're into sophisticated actions. Okay? So in the sporting world, it's the sports person thinking, what exactly do you want me to do in this team plan? I really need to understand this. Does that make sense? Enablement is all about how do you help me to be able to do that performing, which is all about the practice, etc., etc. Make sense? Cool. And now over here, we've got the reflective space. So far, it's about, I want to feel safe, I want to feel connected, I need to know exactly what I've got to do. Right? So what do you do over here then? What's your reflective need?
Well, I always look back at what I've done and look at what I could do better and look at the things that made me struggle when I wanted to perform. So it's been touched on, just wanting to access something and you spend an hour trying to find it and you can't and you give up and that's frustrating. So it's being able to look back and to enable yourself to look forward.
That's perfect, because that is the reflective space. It's saying, looking at all of this stuff, see if we can be conditioned and practiced to do this, but over here we need to know I'm doing the right things. Does this matter to me? This is like, so for a manager, this is the strategic space. This is the space where we sort of say, yeah, we can be really, really good at what we're doing, but are we doing the right things? Are we chasing the right market? Are we focusing in the wrong areas? These guys want to get on with it and get it done. But this is the space that says, are we doing the right thing? And for instance, in the sporting world, I was involved in some form of football management. And it's critical, the relationship between the manager at the side, who should be surveying all this and seeing what's going on in the game, and in particular the captain on the pitch. Because the captain on the pitch can feel the energy of what's going on, can sense when it's time to start push forward into attack, or when you need to do back off a bit and recover. So it's all of those things going on that help us to understand this amazing brain that we've got and how we get the best out of it. Does that make sense? Thank you very much, ladies. And it's a theme for the day. The ladies are so much more courageous in getting up front than the blokes are.
You're up here.
Yeah, that's true. Doesn't rule. Okay, so we've just tried to capture that, okay? Is that there was a word that was on one of the previous slides that wasn't picked up, because we can reinforce it now. All the combination of the things we've discussed result in belief. And it's belief that takes us to that exceptional place. If we don't believe in what we're trying to do, we're distracted. See, the biggest problem with the emotional space is that it brings distractions in, okay? And it's so frustrating, a player can come back into the playing environment from one week to the next with exactly the same talent, exactly the same level of fitness, and still be in a different place because of what's happening emotionally in their life. That's the great unknown that we're still trying to understand. But when we get it right, we're in this place of belief where everything is immersed in the task that's in front of us, and we just do not want to be distracted. So, I'll get to you.
Yeah, so we're going to draw it to a close now because it's lunchtime, and if you want to ask us any questions, we're going to be around for the rest of the day anyway. But just to end really on energetic connection, Clive talked about it earlier in terms of our bodies. The fact that we are all energetically connected with each other is a really important concept that we just weren't aware of before. So we all impact each other psychologically but also physically, and so we want to make sure that the energetic connection between us is positive and it's going to produce those sustainable benefits that we want, and that we're positively interacting with each other. So I suppose it's just a point to end on, to say let's not forget that we all impact each other. You'll all know that time someone who's walked into a room has brought the mood down, and someone who's walked into a room has made everything far more positive. that's going on between us all the time, and we want to be on the same path and the same energetic journey. But energy, as Clive said, has to be renewed. We have to replenish it, so we have to remember to build in those breaks and make sure we take responsibility to get ourselves into the right energetic state to work as part of this team, this community that we're trying to achieve to get to the goals we want to.
A last comment for me, and it's physics. I said I wouldn't talk about physics, but I'm going to finish on a physics point because I can. It's about momentum.
Just cut his
okay?
microphone off quickly.
Yeah. Why do you think I'm stood over here? Can't get at it. So basically, in physics, we talk about momentum, okay, which is mass times velocity or speed. Right? You can take that into an organizational and sporting context because momentum is everything. You see it every time you watch a game, how things swing during the course of a game. And when you've got momentum, that's your opportunity to be absolutely at your best. And basically what physics says, it's mass times speed, which basically means it's this big lump of energy that's available to us, okay? And the speed at which we can bring that to effect and to result. That's what momentum is, and that's what we are trying to create energetically in the sporting world and in the world of business. Thank you very much.
Yeah.